I may be fashionably late, as always, but I would like to wish you a very Happy New Year! Hi everyone, it's Jenny. Welcome back to my channel. How are you all? It's New Year, a woohoo for that. And I realised I have not done a wrap-up since May. Whoa. So, I know no one's going to care that much to hear about all the books, and there's only so long I can waffle for, so I'm going to pick 2 or 3 of the best books from each month. Let's go! Starting with June, we have my probably favourite book of the year, which is Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo, which I will not talk about here because I'm going to talk about it for the 5th time or whatever it is in my favourite books video, which should be coming soon. I promise I will not upload it 10 months late like last year. So, yay for Girl, Woman, Other. The other book that I read because it was Pride Month in June was the lesbian novel The Well of Loneliness by Radcliffe Hall, which I know does not sound like the happiest book, but I really think it's worth reading. I think it's quite amazing because of how it explores gender in a really different way. It was published in 1928 and the protagonist is called Stephen Gordon, I think, and she's called that because her father is, as you know, predictably, desperate for a son because he wants to pass everything on, inheritance, lineage, all that jazz. So she grows up as a tomboy and is very astute at sports and masculine in dress as well, and then realises when she has a little flirtation with the maid that she's a lesbian. So it's her progressive romantic relationships, but she goes to the front and is an ambulance driver, I think, in World War One, and meets Mary Llewellyn, who's her real love of her life, and it's a lot about their relationship. But why it's really interesting and radical is not just because she's sort of masquerading as a man a bit sometimes, at least anyway, or at least rejecting femininity. It's interesting because it kind of looks at the idea of sexual inversion, as it's sort of called, i.e. being a lesbian, as a kind of God-given state, like it's something that she's always been born as, and that I think caused huge uproar. I don't know what that was, and I don't think it was banned, but I know that there were lots of angry men, and I think there was some kind of court case. So it's a really important lesbian novel that I actually hadn't heard of. I think it's her most famous book, but maybe I'm just very unaware. But I recommend if you want to read a gay classic, because I thought it was amazing. And then we're on to July, and the books are falling down. And I have The Good Immigrant, which is edited by Nikesh Shukla, which is 21 different authors who are black, minority ethnic, or Asian, and it was really interesting. Obviously some are better than others. The last one was particularly strong. Can I remember what it's about? No. But the first one is written by Nikesh, who writes about how the word namaste has been kind of bastardised and how it's sort of a hipster yoga term but really just means hello, and how it's been misused and how language is misconstrued and yeah, just redefined in a negative way, the idea of kind of cultural appropriation, I suppose. There's a great essay by Riz Ahmed, the actor, about the prejudice and interrogation that he experienced when he was travelling to America, especially for film work. And there's also an essay by Renee Ideologic, again along the same sort of lines about representation on screen or the lack of it. But actually the most interesting and illuminating essay for me was the one about the racism towards Chinese people and how that's a lot less visible and discussed than racism towards black people. So highly recommend. And then it was also obviously Jane Austen July, and I read many Pride and Prejudice retelling, but my favourite one was definitely The Other Bennet Sister by Janice Hadlow? Oh, it'll be up here somewhere. But it was great because it's Mary's perspective. But what I liked is it isn't just a retelling, while a third of the book does show the events of Pride and Prejudice through her eyes, which I liked because I literally never really cared or thought about Mary. I think she's a bit like Beth, a little woman. She's sort of alright, but you don't really care. She's not that interesting compared to her other vivacious sisters. But the other 2/3 of the book is beyond Pride and Prejudice. So it's about her going to Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner, her aunt and uncle in London, and her romantic endeavours, and I loved it. I thought it was great, and by far the best one that I read that month. And then we're on to August already. This is going well, guys. I'm sorry if I'm gabbling. I'm really trying to not make this a million hours long. This is Constellations, Reflections from Life by Sinead Gleeson. It's wonderful, obviously, because in this video, but it's a lot about her body and how her body tells a story of her life, but also huge reflections on motherhood and bodily autonomy, especially because she's Irish, so she's talking about abortion rights and just I suppose also the history of women sort of being in pain or not being believed by doctors, and the importance of just, yeah, again, bodily autonomy and to have rights to choose what they want to do with babies, if they don't want to have babies, if they want to have babies, and just about grief and motherhood and just that whole one experience. It was so rich and wonderful. And then another memoir that was amazing is Motherwell, A Girlhood by Deborah Orr, who very sadly passed away from cancer before this was published, and the paperback of this has just come out. And I bought it the day it came out. Actually, I'd never heard of her, but she was a journalist who I suppose most notably wrote for The Guardian, among other publications. But Motherwell is the town she grew up in Scotland, and it's a lot about her connection to the place, even though she wanted to get away from it, and her slightly suffocating problematic parents. Very complicated relationship there. But each chapter is an object, like a keepsake or a piece of furniture of hers or in the house that she lived in, or the flat. And I loved that idea, the idea of nostalgia and what things bring back memories. And I just thought it was, wonderfully written, but also a really interesting exploration of growing up in that time and the social expectations and gendered expectations that were placed upon her parents, and how her mother was really quite frustrated, and how her dad suffered when there was a lack of labour available. And it was just a wonderful reflection, but also so poignant knowing that she's passed away now. And I haven't seen many people talk about this book. I have seen a few going about Constellation, which is great, but I really hope more people read this, because I thought it was a beautiful, beautiful read. And the audiobook is lovely, because it's narrated with this great Scottish brogue, and it's very gentle, and I, again, highly recommend. And then, I know what I'm doing. We have All Passion Spent by Vita Sackville-West, which I thought, very stupidly, this was going to be a light-hearted, funny novel. It's not really that. It's a lot more, I don't want to say serious, but it's just kind of more reflective, because the protagonist, Lady Slane's husband, has passed away. He has sadly popped his clogs, and the children gather around expecting her to just quietly go into a home and give up on life and be boring so that they can start working out the inheritance. But actually she decides to strike out on her own and go to Hampstead and rent a house there, because why wouldn't you go and rent a house in Hampstead? And she becomes friends with the landlord, and it's just a lovely story because there are not enough books with elderly protagonists, and I just think it allows the characters to have a lot of rumination. And then there's a lovely period where she's sort of sitting and she's just remembering things in her relationship with her husband and her life, and how she had ambitions and how they were sort of quashed. And I just thought it was, well, like I said, not funny like I thought it was going to be. It was just a lovely read, and I definitely want to read more by her. And we're on to September. So we have The Black Flamingo by Dean Atos. Sorry, I know my earrings do that a bit. I hope you can't hear that, it isn't annoying. And this is a YA kind of, yeah, I would say verse novel. I loved it. I'm really into this genre. I don't read YA, but I really like verse novels. And this is a Bildungsroman story, ooh, technical term, aka coming of age story of Michael, who I think he's at 8 or 10 when it starts, and then it goes up to him in university, and it's a lot about him exploring his sexuality and trying to become comfortable and find a safe space for him to explore and enjoy and express his gay identity, and how he at university finds solace in drag and becomes the Black Flamingo. So it's building to this performance of him as a drag queen, and it's just phenomenal when it gets to that, and that whole performance, the way that poetry is written is just wonderful, and it's just really fun to read because some of it, as you can see, is like this and it's written like poetry, and then some of it is like a notebook and some of it's like text messages. So I think it's, again, a really good thing to read if you're scared of poetry, because this is just a really easygoing narrative and I loved it so much. And another memoir, because I'm a sucker for memoirs obviously, is Gone, A Girl, a Violin, A Life Unstrung by Min Kim, who I want to say was Korean. Oh, I think so. She was a child prodigy at the violin and horrifically had her Stradivarius stolen, hella valuable, and it's while it starts there, it also goes back, so you see her start to learn the violin, and the way she describes her connection and her enjoyment of playing the music and feeling the music, and also her bond with the instruments that she plays and the different violins that she goes through is so beautiful. And I very badly played the violin when I was young, and I gave up because I didn't practice, and I failed my grade 2 exam by 5 marks, but what of it? But my sister, I bought this for her because she actually got her grade 8 and she still plays it, so it's a really great gift. And it also talks about the investigation with the police with the Stradivarius, and you find out if or not she gets it back and what the consequences are, and it's it really made me feel things. When it describes when it's stolen, oh my goodness, I was bereft, and it's not even my violin. So I thought that was wonderful written. And what's really fun is there is a Spotify playlist that you can listen to, and then it has a little number and you can listen to a piece that she's talking about playing while you're reading it, and I thought that was genius. So we're on to Victober, and I'm very sorry I'm not doing a separate wrap up because actually I read a decent amount on my TBR, but never mind, here we are. This is Mary Seacole, Wonderful Adventures of Mrs. Seacole in Many Lands, and she was a Jamaican, or British Jamaican, I want to say nurse, but she had a lot of medical knowledge, and she spends half the book talking about being in Jamaica and other islands like Panama and sort of in the Caribbean, West Indies area, and then about coming to England, and the other half of the book is the Crimean War, which is what I was super interested in because that's what she's most known for. And it's really sad to see that she was rejected 3 times by the English. They just didn't want her to go and help, so she very innovatively went out and set up her own boarding house in Crimea. And I don't know anything about the Crimean War apart from more people died of disease than on the battlefield, and that whole part was really great, but I didn't expect to enjoy the first part as much, although I did enjoy the second part more. So this is a really good Victorian classic if you're trying to find ones by black authors, because that's so hard to find, unfortunately. And I would say if you want to read this, get this edition or get one with notes, because I didn't know a lot about the places she was going to or about the war, and there's certain references to ranks and armies, shenanigans, so it's really helpful. I know there are some editions that don't have notes, so get the notes, get the academic edition. It was great. And then the other book, so hard to choose, but the other book I want to talk about is Little Dorrit by Charles Dickens, because I just loved this. I love the BBC series, so I think that has sort of helped me. I definitely pictured the actors in my mind, but it's about Amy Dorrit, who has grown up the child of the king of the Marshalsea prison. Essentially, like her father's really highly regarded, and no, that's that word, the father of the Marshalsea, because he's just been there for flipping ages. And it's obviously biographical because Dickens' father was in the Marshalsea prison, and I think books like that or David Copperfield that have biographical elements for me are normally more successful, and I enjoy them more than when it's just random adventures like in his earlier novels. And I think it's my second favourite, but it might be my first. I just loved the characters. The audiobook is perfection because there's a character called Panks who's constantly snorting, and it made me laugh out loud. And obviously, being Dickens, it's very complicated because it's one of his 800-page whoppers. So it's partly about her family changing fortunes and so much about class in that novel. That is just exemplary. I think it's really well paced. I loved it, and also the exploration of money and the importance of wealth, which I think knowing more about Dickens and how he was so obsessed with earning money, especially because his father was really bad to the day he died and was constantly having to be like hauled out of a financial hole by Dickens. So it's just a wonderful, wonderful book. I really feel like he put a lot of himself in that book. And we're on to non-fiction, November, which I think is the month I read the most books. But didn't I count? No, I didn't, because, you know, I'm not prepared like that. But this is a book that I think is the best non-fiction book I've read this year, and it may be small, but do not underestimate this book. There's a lot of wonderful, thought-provoking words in this book. This is Whites on Race and Other Falsehoods by Ortega Uwagba, who, by the way, you should definitely follow on Twitter and Instagram because she's hilarious. And it's an essay written in response to what happened in May with George Floyd's murder, but it's interesting because while this might sound contradictory, while this is a book, which, by the way, I'm enjoying all these short books. These are very in vogue at the moment. Everyone's churning out these little books, but it's a book that is kind of, I don't want to say disparaging, but points out that all of these black reading lists and all the people buying Renee Edgar-Lodge's book and that kind of thing, it's just quite an easy thing to do. That's the same as reposting something on social media. It's easy to do, but actually has very little impact. And if you want to make genuine change and help black people and black community, then you have to give up your white privilege. You have to be more aware of that and challenge it yourself. You have to be uncomfortable and give up opportunities sometimes. And also she talks about the idea of trapdoor racism, which she's taking from another book that she read, and the idea that black people or people of colour are always in danger of that, about how white people, and she talks about specific experiences in her own life as well, about how she can be having a conversation with a friend or a friend of a friend, and suddenly they say something that's racist, and then they become either very defensive or dismissive when they're challenged on the root and origin of that thought. And it's just a great book, and it's short, there's no excuse. I would love it if you could support her writing. Then another book that I don't want to talk about too much because obviously quite a few of these will be in my best books of the year video, which is coming soon. I'm determined for that to not be 10 months late like last year. This is Last Witnesses, Unchildlike Stories by Svetlana Alexievich, which is a very impressive collection of accounts from people who were children during the Second World War in the Soviet Union. I forget how flippin' massive the Soviet Union was. So obviously it's covering a very large area that I learnt absolutely nothing about when I did the Second World War at school. So it's simultaneously really hopeful and horrifying. That is how I would describe it, because it really does show the worst of humanity and the pure evil they're capable of, the unnecessary cruelty of war, but it also details some wonderful instances of kindness from strangers and community, and I just loved it. I was so moved by it, and I definitely cannot wait to read Sugar Prayer, which I have on my shelf by her. So, we made it to December, guys. This is good. We're on to this lovely Japanese novel, If Cats Disappear from the World, by Genki Karamura, which I didn't expect to love as much as I did. But, it was such a sweet gem of a book. So it's about a guy who finds out he's going to die, and then the devil rocks up in an Hawaiian shirt, because, you know, that's normal, and says, you're going to die tomorrow, but if you get rid of something from the whole world, I will let you live one more day. And each thing that he chooses has a connection to someone, and he has an experience or nostalgia or memories of those objects and how they've affected his life and how they have connected him to people. And it's just a lot, I will say, about family and his fractured relationship with his father, and how the cat and all of this experience can heal their relationship. It's just a lovely book, and it wasn't what I expected, actually. And when I describe this to people who like cats, they are horrified, but don't worry, I promise you it's a beautiful read. And then last but not least, you guys, I think we did quite well here. This is a book I'm obviously not finished, because this goes from December to the end of February, but this is a poem for every winter day, which is edited by Ali Essery, and I'm very behind on this. I'm on the 16th of December. But that's okay. But there's 2 poems for each day, and while I enjoyed the autumn one, I think this is much better, because sometimes, I'm real with you, sometimes on a certain day, they're commemorating an anniversary of an historic event that I don't care about because it's American and you know, it's not something I'm aware of or really care about or have any connection to, or it's just something that I just think, well, you could have found a better or more autumnal poem. But this, I have loved this, and if you, again, don't know poetry, this is great because there's lots of variety and it's just 2 poems, it's just a few pages a day. Though I am behind. But I'm loving this collection and I'm excited for the spring one. So there we go, you guys. How was your reading year? I read a lot of books, and that's, I would say, by far the best thing I did all year is that I read a lot of books. So I will shut up now because this is probably still about half an hour long, and I will see you soon for Bookish Shenanigans. Bye!